Oceans beneath where rivers will flow. Paradise where nothing will hurt anymore. Won't hurt anymore.
Hey, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
Welcome to another episode of Sunday Morning Coffee with Friends. How is everyone this morning?
Alhamdulillah, enjoying the long weekend.
Right, same here.
Clean.
Exactly.
Well, we could, but no, right?
Right. Exactly.
So are you guys officially on summer break now, Kalila? Well, Naima too. Are you guys officially?
Well, me personally, no, because my program, unfortunately, it's early learn and it's with like a Head Start. So we go year round. It's a year round program.
Year round. Yeah.
The DOE classrooms, they're on summer break, but unfortunately, I don't work in the DOE classroom. My program is a year round. So no, I'm not on summer break.
Yeah.
I'm still working.
Well, you have today off tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah, and tomorrow, yes. So I'm trying to get the most out of this weekend, inshallah.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Sounds good.
I won't complain about anything to anybody then.
Right? I know. DOE teachers have it really good.
They do. They really, really do.
And regular school teachers have it really good as well. Like if you teach in like a preschool or a year-round school, it sucks to be you right now.
Yes. Yeah. Really does. Really does.
So without further ado, let's open up with some dua. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Without further ado, Kalila, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so our mugs are, which I do not have this morning, and I apologize for that. I'm at a different location today, so I do not have my mug. But yes, Quasia and Naima both have theirs, so you can see it for them. Mugs are still available to purchase on our site, $25 plus shipping. So go out and get yours today if you have not purchased one yet. Also, I want to mention also Eid al-Adha is coming up. So it might make a great Eid al-Adha gift for someone, a family member, a friend. So with Eid al-Adha just around the corner, maybe you might want to get your loved one a mug, an MWI mug. So just FYI, you may want to do that. And again, $25 plus shipping. It's available at wholeheartedmuslim.com/shop. Please go out and buy it today. Also, shout out to our YouTube viewers. We are streaming live on YouTube right now. And don't forget, while you are there, be sure to share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And all of our latest videos are posted on our channel. So you can always go back and view them whenever you want. They are on our YouTube channel. So look for us at Muslim Wholehearted Initiative on YouTube. Also, we are looking for women-owned businesses for a project that we're working on, inshallah, this summer. We are working in collaboration with Masjid Al-Taqwa here in Brooklyn, New York, as well as Akila's Voices, a beautiful organization. And we're working in collaboration with them to, if you're a woman and you own a business, that we're trying to do our special project for this summer. So please reach out to us if you do have a business or you know someone who is a Muslim woman business owner. Reach out to us at Wholehearted Muslim Wholehearted Initiative at gmail.com. And inshallah, we can provide more details about that. We're really excited about that, inshallah. And as the COVID restrictions lift, we will be having more in-person events, inshallah, coming up for you. So please be on the lookout for those as well. Also, a $50 donation. With a $50 donation, you could get to attend one of our workshops for free. It could be a workshop of your choosing. So with a $50 donation, you can choose any one of our upcoming workshops and you get to attend that for free. So I think that's a fantastic deal. Please try to take advantage of that. All information as well as the link for that will be on our page at wholeheartedmuslim.com/donation, and you will find it there. And our next workshop will be coming up soon, inshallah, which is going to be conducted by our very own Zainab Abdurrahim. And it is called Finding Serenity, a Way Through for Divorced and Separated Muslims. And she has done this workshop a couple times before with huge success. So alhamdulillah, she's doing it again for us this year. And if you know someone who will be interested in this, please go ahead to our website and sign up for her workshop. And Zainab is going to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, Khalil, I apologize. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at what we posted in the group chat, but unfortunately, we have postponed
It's
Sunday
postponed.
morning. Yes, indefinitely. So, as some of you may have seen on social media, I know I did post sharing what's been happening with my mom. She was in a horrible accident where she fell out of bed while she was at the hospital, and she sustained an injury to her left eye that was so severe that she is now permanently blind in her left eye. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give her shifa. But as a family, we are really just, we are just really trying to deal with that and, you know, just support her at this time and support one another at this time. So for the time being, the workshop is canceled. If there's anyone that has registered, we can talk about when we'll have the date as things kind of ease up for for my family. And of course, if you'd like a refund, that's always an option as well. This is just a really difficult time, but we trust Allah and we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just. And
So I just wanted to share something, a personal anecdote about Sister Saida, Zainab's mom. It was so interesting because my uncle, who I don't know if he's watching, but he's in his 40s, and Sister Saida actually delivered him via home birth. So Sister Saida. So Sister Saida has been a pillar of the Muslim community for decades. She has been doing this work before it became popular, before it became a hashtag. And we know everything that goes along with women giving home births, why they want to give home births, not feeling comfortable as Muslims of the community, as Black Muslim women, as women of color. So for her to provide that safe space for Muslim women decades ago, okay, like I said, I don't want to age my uncle, but decades ago, that says a lot about her character. And as she has supported us, it's our turn to definitely support her. We can support comes in many forms. Of course, at the pinnacle of that is with your du'as, which we are asking for, which we are seeking for, and also with our pockets if we are able to. So as we mentioned, there is a launch good. Please donate if you are able to, and please share it with other members of the community, inshallah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. The Launch Good link will be in the comments. SubhanAllah, Ifama. I didn't know that my mom delivered.
Wow. What a little, wow. That's a small world.
Yeah, I didn't know
very
that.
small.
Very.
Oh.
If we was in the South, maybe we'd be cousins.
We all do. Yeah. Very well known in the community here. For those who don't know her, very well known in the community here in Brooklyn. We all know her for years. I knew her as a child. My mom, alhamdulillah, had the privilege of working with her, actually, when she was working with Muslim Social Service Agency. So, we've known her. Small world.
Yes.
Yeah. So, a lot of connections. Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Yeah. This has been like this has been really hard. But alhamdulillah, like people have been really reaching out to offer support. And we just thank Allah. We really just thank Allah because Allah is just. And thank you guys. Thank you guys. I didn't know that were going to say that at all. I'll be back.
So if you guys want to donate, please see the link below.
Yes.
More than anything, of course, we're asking for your du'as and ask you to just share this. At the end of the day, this was a huge injustice. And in our religion, we strive for justice. If we see an injustice anywhere, whether it's with our words, with our actions, we try to fight against this. So this is a severe injustice beyond words. So please, please, please offer your support in any way you can. And it is greatly appreciated. Yes. Okay. Now with that, I think I'm actually going to go in. I'm going to switch gears a bit and go into our topic for today.
Yes.
So if you've been following along, you have husband written all over you. Stop entertaining women who can't read. Okay. Part 3. Yes, that's right. Part 3, because this was so juicy last week. We had to offer a part 3. 7 ways to preserve your honor and avoid zina.
Yeah.
So quick recap, if you've been following along, the first part was us talking about women and stop entertaining men and what we can do to guard our honor. But on the flip side of that, what do men have to say and how can they also guard their honor? So last week was somewhat controversial to say the least, but we do think it's important to offer a platform for our Muslim brothers to offer their feedback, inshallah. So we will be continuing with this discussion today.
And I think that's what makes it really beautiful, is that we're getting to hear the insight from a male perspective. So regardless of how we feel about something, it's not necessarily our feeling, and this is how other people feel. And I think it's so important that we're giving a platform and that we're able to respect other people's opinions, regardless if we agree with them or not. So I think that's really, I'm really excited to hear more about this.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. So I think without further ado, let's meet our panelists. Right. So first up, we have, if my screen will work properly. There we go. Okay.
Yay.
Dr. Ray Brock Murray. Dr. Ray, as he is known in the community, earned his PhD from Seton Hall University and has been a counselor for Muslims since 2009. He's currently assistant imam at Masjid Ahl Sunnah and founder of the 5 Before 5 Foundation, a mental health nonprofit for Muslims. He also found Psychology in Color, which is an initiative started to provide mental health counseling and programming in communities of color and faith, as well as other underserved communities. Working as partners with organizations in these communities to offer these services and provide mental health consultation and training to our partners at the same time. To add to that, Dr. Murray is also our clinical consultant here at MWI and a part of our MWI family. So welcome to Dr. Ray. We're excited to have him. Next, we have Brother Muhammad Shahid, who, if you notice that there's a striking resemblance between your sister, Kalila, it's not a coinky dinky. They are related. This is Kalila's first and foremost younger brother, but he was born and raised.
Younger.
Right, that's very important to point out. Muhammad was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He currently works as a senior communication and signal engineer for Metro North Railroad. He also works as a part-time professor at Gateway Community College in New Haven, Connecticut. He has been MSA president as well as served on masjid boards. He currently resides in Hamden, Connecticut, where he lives with his beautiful wife and twin sons. And again, we're really excited to have them both here. And we will go ahead and add them now. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We're really excited. Thank you for joining us again. So let's jump right into the conversation. Naima, take us away.
Okay, so the 7 tips to help brothers preserve their honor. I think that's pretty much where we left off last week. So I think we wanted to start with that, right, Zainab?
Yes. Well, actually, we are going to do the 7 tips, but let's jump into the couple of questions that we came up with. Last week's conversation, and then we'll get into the tips because we got a lot of questions, a lot of comments on last week's conversation, and it kind of brought up follow-up questions for us. So let's, inshallah, start with those questions, Naima. Inshallah.
Okay, so the first question is, guys, and obviously, like I said, disclaimer, last time, this is not necessarily, a goal for all in general, but just through, a lens of some males. And so the first question is, what are brothers looking for in a wife?
Take it away.
Take it away. Take it away, Shay.
My internet connection is very, very bad today, and I can't seem to do anything to improve it. I didn't hear the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Same as mine. Yeah, my internet connection.
Can I repeat the question?
Yeah, what are brothers looking for in a wife? Are we able to put it in the chat?
Sure, we can put it up.
Yeah, I can't. If you can post,
Absolutely. We'll put it
I
up.
was going to say, if you can post it or put it in the chat. I'm
Sure.
sorry.
I think it's with the 4th of July because I'm having the same issue.
Yeah, I don't
Maybe a
know
lot
what
of
it is.
people-
I'm trying to go all over the house, and it's all bad.
Mm-hmm. So, what are brothers looking for in a wife?
Ray, Mohammed, don't all jump in.
Okay, I'll start.
I'm going to pretend to be frozen.
Muhammad used that one last week. No.
That's true. Dr. Ray, we're running a quarterback sneak or a bootleg right now, okay? Running naked
I
bootleg.
got it, yes.
Naked bootleg.
I don't even know.
Yes.
Man code.
Man codes, exactly. We're running a naked bootleg right now.
That's right, yes.
So yeah, as you said a second ago, sister, the disclaimer, it's I'm speaking from one person or maybe a small circle of people I know, because what are brothers looking for in a wife it's a pretty broad, open-ended question. I mean, it varies. Are you divorced with children and looking for someone to help you raise your children? Or are you first time married? Or are you, there's a lot of things. What background are you coming from? But in general, just generally, a lot of times men are looking for those, cliches of, nurturing and kindness and warm-heartedness, supportiveness, cooperation. Like on a broad level, I would, just thinking myself, that's what most men want in a wife. Now, whether they'll recognize that when they see it is a different question. But in general, those things that we've pretty much all been told for most men, yeah, those are all attractive, compatible features. Cooperation, support, empathy, kindness, humility, all those things. All those words we think of. In general, those are the things that most of us are looking for in a partner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would agree.
Just to flip the question a little bit, what would be a turnoff?
Right.
Like, what was something that really would like a brother would really make a brother stop and say, no, I wouldn't even bother pursuing someone like her. Other than the physical.
Yeah, right, because that's subjective, right? So,
exactly.
Other than, there's one common theme. Not all, but a lot of brothers I know. So there's one common theme that usually comes back: argumentative, and anything that branches off of that. As far as it's okay to have, of course, your own opinion, your own thoughts, stand up for yourself. Be an independent thinker. That's not a problem. But if any way, shape, or form, if a potential spouse comes across as either argumentative or maybe just unnecessarily combative on things where you're like, well, is it that big a deal, really? Can we just go along to get along? If most men, Muslim men especially, if they sense that in a personality trait, and it could be misread, a sister just may be naturally an outgoing person. What's the word? A type A personality, and she's just assertive and just has no problem expressing herself. It could be misread by some brothers as saying, oh, she's going to be a problem. I've heard that. But in general, anything that's to do with that even looks like argumentative or combativeness, for a lot of the people I know, that's going to be the generic just turn off.
Okay.
I can definitely see that.
Dr. Ray.
Is he frozen?
No, he's not frozen.
Is he pretending to be frozen?
You had me fooled.
Fell off. You know what? while we wait for Ray to come back, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that, right? Because I find that when a woman has agency, right? Like she has opinion, she has thoughts, she has a pulse. No, I'm joking. But when a woman has agency, it's oftentimes misinterpreted as being confrontational, right? So is there a bit of responsibility on the brother to kind of do some of his own work so that he's able to discern between the two? Because to have an opinion, like you said, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having an opinion, but someone who's just arguing for the sake of arguing, and we know people like that. Like this is a real characteristic of some women and some men too, that just want to fight to be right. But just someone who has an actual legit opinion on something and is maybe well versed in something, and she expresses that opinion. Like how do we support our brothers in being able to discern between that and not writing a sister off?
Right. That's a very, very good question and a very delicate question at the same time, because we can look at the Prophet ﷺ and his wives, and you can find that rainbow personalities amongst them. Like you can kind of look and you see a little more laid back, a little more assertive, some in the middle. You can, if you look close enough, you can see all the things that I mentioned. You can see all that in them. It's not, and you don't have to look that deeply. And obviously they're all pious, you know, women that we love. They're our mothers, and trying to discern between, as you said, someone who just has agency. I like that word use. Has agency versus someone who's just like unnecessarily just picking fights. It does take a little bit of homework, because it can be misrepresented based on what our reference point is. For example, you know, you can go to a place of work, and maybe some of you've experienced it. You know, if a woman's assertive at work, there's a special word for that. But if a man's assertive at work, there's a different word. If a Caucasian male is assertive in a certain way at work, you know, he's a go-getter. He's a take charge kind of guy. If the guy is maybe black or Latin or some other background, he's difficult to work with. He doesn't work well with others. He's not a team player. They can have the same traits, but because we put people in boxes as far as where we're comfortable viewing them, it affects our judgments. So the same thing to me extends to the Muslim community. So yeah, trying to do the homework and seeing where that sister, now maybe she just is that way, but you know, but making sure that you do your due diligence to see that, okay, well, maybe the sister might be a good fit for me and she for I, vice versa, because maybe those traits are useful, you know, to you and your family. Maybe you need somebody in your life who's a little more assertive and maybe not stay on top of you, but, you know, someone that's going to, you know, encourage you and kind of push you a little bit. So yes, I agree. You need to do a little more homework and not just write someone off based off of maybe a preconceived notion of what you saw.
Right. Right.
Was I able to add to that, or not in a way to impose my thought, but to kind of impose my thought? Do you believe that cultural identity also is a contributing factor to what is considered, you know, assertive or, you know, overbearing?
Yes. I think I know where you're going. Yes. There's certain perceptions of certain cultures that men may have where women from this specific background are, quote unquote, all like this, or the ones from this background are all like that. We've all heard it. So that also plays into the back of their heads, our heads saying, okay, well, because she fits the stereotype in my head and she's from the background of XYZ, there's no point in even talking anymore because I know what she's all about already. That's a dangerous stereotype that, you know, to be fair, we've all been guilty of. There's a gentleman, a friend of mine at my job, not a Muslim, but he specifically told me, I think he's Italian, and he said, hey, he can never date Italian women because they said my mother and this and that. He went this whole thing. So he always dated women from other backgrounds because he said, oh, all of them are like this, all of them are like that. And I'm like, you know, it's your culture. I can't really speak to it, but he's convinced himself that all women from his background, Italy, are a certain behavior or certain type or certain, you know, demeanor that just doesn't work for him. So he always, you know, stays away. And Muslim men, again, are guilty of the same thing at times. stereotyping women on regions and idealizing their culture and saying, "Oh, they're all like this, so it should be perfect for me."
Morocco. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it.
Thank you. I appreciate that insight.
I appreciate your perspective. Dr. Ray, if you are not frozen and you can hear us, we'd like to hear your perspective. and just before anybody comes to us in the comments, we are just joking.
Yes.
Everyone is not painted with a broad brush, and we know that situations are nuanced, but there is something to be said about brothers going to another country seeking wives and leaving sisters here to be unmarried. And that is a larger conversation that we will not be having today, but it is a conversation that should be had. So go ahead, Ray. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, everybody. I'm sorry I'm having so much trouble today. I hope it doesn't interfere too much. So the one thing that I just wanted to add, alhamdulillah, that you have a great guest for me to be frozen on, alhamdulillah, because the brother Muhammad is holding it down. The one thing I would say is that when you ask what men are looking for in a wife, I think that we have to look at, what are, in science, we would say the operational definitions of these things, right? Because I think that's where we've run into the most trouble, right? In general, you won't be wrong if you're saying that you're looking for, a wife with good character. The problem is that we all have different definitions as men of what good character is. We're looking for a wife who's supportive. As men, we have different definitions of what that is. And so if you say to a woman, I'm looking for a woman who's supportive, and she finds herself to be supportive, she's going to say, okay, I'm supportive. And the problem then becomes that you two have two different definitions of what supportive looks like. And then you guys feel like, oh, you weren't honest with me, you weren't honest with me. And the reality of it is that we don't explore these concepts within ourselves on a deeper level before we start to actually talk to someone. What does it mean to be nurturing? What does it mean to be supportive? What does it mean to be religious? What does it mean to be practicing? Are we looking for a wife who works or doesn't work? What's our timeline for having children or not, right? Like, kinds of things are so important, just building on what Muhammad was saying, because to me, that becomes some of the biggest issues that people present with when they come into couples counseling is like we talked about these things. I think the last time we talked, it was the idea of doing the work, right? Like when you meet somebody and you like them, you stop investigating, you stop asking questions, you stop digging deeper into the details of your compatibility with each other. And so I would say that is very, very important, right? Like how do you, this idea of like love languages, women are very much into that. What's my love language? Well, you got to also find out what the guy's love language is too, and to work with each other to figure that out, because you're going to marry the guy. And I'll give you an example of this. I'm sorry to take so long, but there was a sister, and I like to tell her story because it speaks so much to what we go through as Muslims. So this sister, she was a white woman, accepted Islam, met a guy who was Pakistani. And she really liked him, and they would meet and talk to each other, always respecting the boundaries, no flirtatious, no kind of touchy-feely, kissy face, pet names. They didn't do any of that. And she said, alhamdulillah, he's just a righteous brother. He doesn't want to mess around. He doesn't want to break any boundaries, and so I can respect that. And so, but what she figured in her mind, because she was coming from Jahiliyyah, she wasn't always Muslim. She's like, when we get married, we're gonna have a relationship like the relationships I had back when I was dating. She married the guy thinking he's just respecting the boundaries in Islam. When we get married, he's gonna be so romantic and loving and kiss and hug and all that stuff. And that just wasn't his way, right? And so she started to internalize a lot of that as, does he not like me? Is he not in love like he thought he was? Did I marry someone who's unable to be romantic? And, a lot of that came down to, they didn't really talk about what they wanted their romantic lives to look like. She just assumed what he was going to be like, and he assumed what she was going to be like. And so they failed to talk to each other. It really turned out to be that He just has a different personality and is coming from a different culture around expressing love and affection. But then also his personality, he had to learn a lot of that stuff. And alhamdulillah, he was willing to do it. He put in the work. But a lot of times when we meet people, I think when we like them, we take for granted that they mean what we mean when we use the same words. And so, again, this word argumentative, a woman might say, I'm not argumentative, but I do like to debate, but a guy might perceive that as argumentative. Or a guy wants a woman who wants to debate, but she sees it as being argumentative. And he's the kind of guy, he likes the back and forth of the discourse. He has a woman who's not into that because it feels like arguing for her. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts to build off of what's been said earlier.
Ray, can I feed off of back, what you were saying? Because, and I think the ladies and I, we were having this conversation the other day, men and women, so many of us have not learned healthy communication skills overall in general. Maybe we didn't see it in the community, see it maybe within our own families. So arguing or like verbal discourse or basically verbal discourse, disagreement, all of that is seen as like fighting, or in the Muslim community, fitna. I've heard men or even women, oh, she's just stirring up fitna, or even women, he's stirring up fitna. And, we like to use these words, and that's why I love when you made that point. But a lot of it is that we are not honest enough with ourselves to say we don't have the tools to go into this discussion with this person who has opposing views than me. So what I'm going to say is either I'm going to shut down completely, or I'm going to have a verbal, be very explosive with my speech, but a lot of these tactics, I think that they're rooted in, we just don't have the tools sometimes, and we're not honest with ourselves enough to say on both sides, we need to do better. So we put the blame a lot of times on the other person.
Correct. That's a good observation. This speaks to the importance of premarital counseling. A lot of people think you have to have problems to go to premarital counseling. Premarital counseling is about having someone guide you through the process of figuring each other out, what's going to be our communication style, because a lot of people confuse talking with communicating, and that's not true, right? Like there's so much more to actual effective communication, listening to each other, understanding what the other person is trying to convey. And also, I think that one thing is important to understand. If you're married or you're about to get married, I think the rule still applies, is being able to have conflict. A lot of people, when they're trying to get married, they try to avoid conflict. That's one of the worst things that you can do, is avoid conflict before you get married. You don't want to start conflict, but when conflict arises, you want to try to learn each other's styles and to see how you work things out. And not being able to resolve it in the beginning isn't a sign that you're not compatible. It's a sign that if you're going to be together, you got to learn how to do it.
Right.
And sometimes we take arguing as a sign that, oh, well, we're not going to get along, or this isn't going to work. And that's not true. You're going to argue whether or not you're the best of friends in a relationship. And so the thing is, can you two as a couple, given that you want to be together, can you devise and develop a new conflict resolution styles that takes the best of what you both bring to the table and figure it out? And so a lot of times we don't take it to mean that. We don't take our arguing to mean that, and we're just competing with each other. And the reality of it is that when you're having a conflict, these are opportunities to learn new ways of interacting with each other that's healthy. Usually the conflict persists is because I want to keep handling it my way, or you want to keep handling it your way, or we're playing what I like to call relationship chicken, right? Which one of us is going to turn first, right? Which one of us is going to say sorry first, or, you know what I mean? And instead of, like both of us agreeing mutually, like if I need to meet your need in this situation, you need to meet my need. Talk about what that looks like for each other.
Right. Ray, last week, you stirred up a lot of controversy with the comment that you. Yes, you were controversy. So you stirred up a lot of controversy when you had made the comment that we had asked the question, why do Muslim men give dawah to non-Muslim women? I think that was the question. Forgive me, ladies, I forget the exact wording. That's but right. That the question, and your response was, and I'm paraphrasing, sexual experience, right? Maybe there's a belief that may be based in reality that non-Muslim women are more sexually experienced. And, you know, it was a polarizing question.
And you can get away with more.
Right, absolutely. And I would agree with that to an extent. Right. And it was a very polarizing question. And we thought about your question. And we have a counter question for you and Muhammad.
Take it away.
Our question is, have Muslim men desexualized the Muslim woman? And as a result, he desires a non-Muslim woman.
Can I share an experience?
No. No, go for it.
No, listen, that's an excellent question, because it's one that's come up a couple of times in counseling. It even just came up just the other day, where seeing each other as objects of desire, right, is a real conversation that we need to have,
right?
Because it is so prevalent in our relationships. And so I think sometimes, and this is, again, I feel like I'm about to get killed, but sometimes the Muslim woman is a little shy. She can be shy about her body. She can be shy about her sexuality. And she can just be shy about being around a man. I know there was one sister who I encountered, who she's married, and she just can't get past the idea that her husband is now her mahram, you know, like she can act on these desires. She kind of treats him like they're in college and MSA together. You know what I mean? Like they're working together to put together a program, and they're not supposed to touch or hold hands. And so she doesn't really see him as like a romantic object. And men will sometimes feel the same way, especially with women. And this has been the thing that's come up a couple of times. Women who are not comfortable with their bodies around men. Not to say that they have necessarily body image issues, but they're not comfortable. I'm trying to put it in the best terms without like being graphic, right? Like a woman who might cover her body in front of her husband. You know what I mean? That has come up a couple of times. A woman who her husband's trying to make moves on her, and you know she's pushing his hand away, or you know what I'm saying? Like in those instances, so it's not necessarily that men are desexualizing their wives, as in like they're just these Mother Teresa kind of figures, but things happen in a relationship where your wife stops being an object of your desire. For one reason or another. And it's not always the worst of reasons. You know, I want to freak in the sheets or any of that kind of stuff. It's just like all kinds of things happen in relationships.
Right.
Or your wife is shy to do something, or you're shy to ask her because you're embarrassed. You know, as a husband, you know, I might be into something that I'm worried she won't be. And so I don't want to say that, because what if she has a strong reaction and then I feel shame?
Right.
Whereas I can go to a non-Muslim woman, at least conceptually in my mind, I can go to a non-Muslim, have a problem with that, because they don't have a problem with anything. They'll do anything and everything. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really what I was trying to get at. And so I think the answer to your question is a little bit.
Oh, we just lost him. I was gonna, while we wait for him to return, I definitely want to hear your perspective on this, Muhammad. But I find, and I think one of the reasons that when we were discussing this question, one of the reasons it came up is because when you go back into slavery, right? Master, he put his white wife on a pedestal, and she was like the standard of beauty, the standard of purity, the standard of class, and she wasn't to be deviled and sexualized, and he's not to play out his sexual fantasies with her. She was there to be a trophy wife and to bear his legitimate children. All of his other sexual innuendos, all of his other fantasies, were played out with the slave woman. And Ray, I hear your perspective, and it's definitely a legitimate one. But I do want to give the woman's perspective as well. I do want to, for what I have seen with brothers, is that your wife is one way in the home, right? But then she has to be another way in the streets. And I think that what happens is with some brothers, there's a schism within them. And it's just like, I want her to be almost similar to how she is in the home. And as Muslim women, we can't be similar to how we are in the home, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put restrictions and guidelines for how we behave and interact when we're outside of our homes. But it's difficult when we are a certain way in the home, yet our husbands still desire us to be this way, to be a similar way to the women that they see in the streets, or a disbelieving woman, or even a Muslim woman who doesn't, cover properly or do the things that they're supposed to do properly. So, and I've seen that more often than not. And ladies, feel free to chime in. I mean, if this doesn't have to be your experience, but I'm speaking from what I.
Actually, it was interesting because this is even outside of the African American community. I have quite a few Pakistani friends, and I knew this growing up, but even also it still exists. And a lot of times, not to generalize, but growing up, even as little girls, as grown women, they're supposed to be almost fully covered around their brothers and their father. So they wear what they call a shalwar kameez, which is, very long tunic shirt, very loose pants. And this is how they are supposed to dress in their homes. It's considered very disrespectful to not dress like this in their home. So this is a cultural aspect. But then again, on the side of that, in your homes, as long as you're not being immodest, you don't have to be almost fully covered. So I think, like what Zainab was alluding to, there is an aspect of, even if the woman is in her own home, there's a certain caliber of how she's supposed to conduct herself, elegantly and Islamically, whatever that means. Like, I think that there are very real images of what we have. It might make, a brother or a husband or a father uncomfortable to see his, and I'm not saying sexualized, to see his daughter, to see his sister, to see his mother looking sensual, looking attractive. And we're still talking about in the home. And I do think it goes back to Zainab's point about like this schism. Non-Muslim women are this way. Muslim women 24/7 are this way. So I just wanted to add, even outside of the fold of the African American, that this seems to be a larger issue within our communities.
So I want to interject on that. I have 2 points for that. The first one is I can only speak for myself personally for this. As from being from Caribbean descent, I completely understand. For me personally, when I was looking to get married, I wanted to marry somebody that was also of Caribbean descent, because I understood that there would be such a huge cultural clash as to what my norm in the house is versus what other people's norms are in the house. And I realized that right away because, for example, having Arab friends or having Desi friends or having revert friends, it's very different. So for me, I knew that if I were to marry somebody that was Arab or Desi, my behavior, my antics, my banter would be considered either aggressive or over sexualized or over too much because of my heritage, because of my culture. So I knew that right away, that for me personally, I'm not saying that people can't overcome these things, but I knew that for myself personally, I still wanted to be on that pedestal. However, I still wanted to have a personality. So for me, finding that was the same culture, that had the same culture as me, was really important. Not necessarily the same ethnicity, but the same or same race, but the same cultural background. So that was the first thing. And I wanted to say the other thing, which kind of being devil's advocate, I also noticed that as people with Afro-Americans and Afro-Caribbeans and people that revert to Islam, there is this idea that you have to become this, especially for women in particular, that you are supposed to become this blank piece of paper where you no longer have personality, where you no longer have a sexual desire, where you no longer have any kind of personality, which for me, growing up on the stories of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the exact opposite of what the Sahaba, the women, what they were like in terms of having personality and just being funny. I always think back about how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his two wives, they ganged up together and they pretended that the honey made his breath smell because they didn't want him to go back to the other wife's house. That's funny. That's real life. That's people. That's personality. And so I always remember that. But I do notice that with Black women who revert into Islam, from my experience, that there's always this, well, I can't recover in front of you, other Muslim sisters. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm not going to let loose or enjoy or laugh too much. And I'm not in a way to defend the brothers, but in a way, it's almost as if, in my perspective, we also desexualize ourselves in some cases.
Excellent point. Mohammed, I was curious to hear your perspective.
I'll rewind a little bit. So I gave it some thought when I saw these questions last night when I was reading. I gave it some thought. And I remembered a conversation I had a long time ago with some friends. And the scenario is this: you're riding on a subway or a train or a bus or whatever, and you're tired, long day of work or school or something, and there's one seat left. And there's a woman on the left, a woman on the right, but there's plenty of space in the middle for you to sit. Would you sit there? And most of the brothers said, if I'm really tired, yeah, I'll sit there. And I said, what if the woman on the left and right were Muslim women with niqab and we sit there? They all said, no way. And
wow.
The point being is, part of it comes from a place of respect. A lot of us grew up in urban areas and stuff, and they were, once upon a time, even non-Muslim men, if they saw a woman going down the street dressed a certain way, they would hide the bottle of alcohol behind their back, or they wouldn't use curse words around Muslim women, or they would say, how you doing, sister? Or good morning. They would just, there's a certain sense of, it's just respect that we have. And sometimes it can almost, again, out of respect, desexualize someone from the standpoint of, not that she's so holy that you can't, but it puts you in a weird mental space where, a sister who's dressed properly and covered properly, who outwardly appears to be doing the things that Allah Ta'ala wants her to do, is a good thing. Just objectively, it's a good thing. However, as a man, it puts you in a weird spot sometimes where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be extra quiet around her. I'm going to leave her alone. And not that pushes you towards a non-Muslim woman per se, but yeah, I've experienced it where you don't view them in that way. They're like, okay, that's my sister in Islam. I respect her. If something were to happen to her, I would try to defend her or whatever. But I'm not trying to view this, person in that way. So having, sexual, thoughts or desires about someone dressed that way is just uncomfortable. It just seems odd for some of us. That's the first thing. The second thing, there's just, again, there's women on this panel. There's a couple of men here. I don't know what everybody's mother, sisters, aunts tell them about this type of stuff. I have no idea. I'm not in the room. So I don't know what happens when a sister is saying, hey, I want to get married. Mm-hmm. Do the mothers take them to the side, or some other respected community sisters and say, hey, this is how this works. This is that. I've been married before. I don't know if that happens. As a man, I'm going to tell you the answer for us, I would say, is no. But I don't know what women, I don't know how that works. And that might be part of the problem, that maybe information is not being shared. And I'm assuming this, but maybe the information isn't being shared, expectations, what some men may expect, things along those lines, that may overcome that, as you call it, sexualization. Because just to be frank about it, and I'm not disrespecting non-Muslim women per se, it's like a dopamine rush. because let's be honest, we're men, we're visual, so everything is right in front of you. A Muslim woman, it takes a little more effort, a little more time to discuss, learn more about her, because, you know, yes, you guys, you know, mashallah, covered properly. Most women, you know, a lot of Muslim women cover properly, alhamdulillah, but, you know, to know what's beyond that is going to take some effort. But the dopamine rush is right in front of you. So you don't have to worry about, I'm saying in a weird way, but you don't really have to exert that much effort because it's right in front of you.
That's a really good point. Khalila, did you want to comment on Muhammad's response? I
yeah, I mean, I do agree with him when we're saying about in terms of our moms or aunts, or if we have older sisters or just sisters in general in the community having conversations with us before we get married. I think that's a good point to bring up, because I don't think it's happening like it should. I don't think these conversations are being had with our daughters, sisters, you know, nieces, whatever the case may be, and that could be a contributing factor to how we respond in terms of our relationship when we do get married, or our relationship with our husbands. You know, these conversations not being had, so we're coming in there, you know, inexperienced and without a lot of knowledge ahead of time, you know, so, you know, that could cause a possible problem or issue with our spouse, our potential spouse. And I think that's a good point to bring up, because I think that's something that needs to be remedied. I think we need to start having these conversations with our daughters.
To be fair, I don't believe men are having them either. Just to be fair, like I don't think
exactly, and it goes both ways.
It's not. Yeah, I don't think those conversations are happening. No.
Absolutely, and it definitely is twofold. I think the men need to have it with the sons, with the men in the community, Muslim boys, and I think the women need to have it with the young girls in the community who are, once they get marrying age, once they express their interest in getting married. I think these conversations need to be had. This needs to be discussed. Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Well, because I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kwesi. Go ahead.
Oh, so quick point, and this we spoke about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, when like our daughters or our sons or even us, you know, when we were transitioning maybe through puberty, so on and so forth, and this may be the time to sit down with your daughter or son and just explain just things on a simplistic level. I feel like, and I'm just can only speak from the woman's experience. Okay, well, now you have to do X, Y, and Z. Now you're responsible for this. So it almost feels like somewhat of a punishment in some ways when I speak to younger people. Okay, so now you're a young woman. Now this is upon you. This is your responsibility, versus this is something that's to embrace and celebrate. And I know, Naima, you mentioned when you had, I think, the celebration for your daughter wearing, you know, hijab. And these type of things are something so simplistic, but it changes the narrative versus something almost subliminally, like, because what is the girl thinking to herself on a subconscious level? You know, is this something dirty? Is this something, you know, like a punishment? We're talking about maybe girls that are 10, 11, 12 years old. Did I do something wrong because my body is developing and changing? So I think even the way we talk to our daughters about this transition that they're going through is so important. And I don't think we're doing a good job. Now, as far as the men, I don't know how those conversations, you know, are going.
But you know what, Ifama, Kwesi, sorry, girl. You know, Khalila's brother. No, I'm sure.
Yes.
You know what's funny though, because you are raising two boys, and you know how, as I guess as moms, and maybe the question is more so for dads too. But then, how do you navigate these conversations with our sons, right? Because I think that it's not just, and we talked about this last week, Kwesi, it's not just the role of the father to have the conversation with the same gendered child, but it's also the responsibility of the mom too, to kind of have these conversations. And it's like, how do we have these conversations? When we know better, we do better. So how are we starting to have these conversations? I remember growing up, I mean, me and my brother are a lot younger than my two older sisters. So oftentimes my mother didn't have a babysitter. So literally when she was going to deliver a child, sometimes she'd have to bring us with her. So I remember my mom kind of coaching someone through starting to push through their contractions. And one of the things my mother would tell the person is to kind of whine her hips. She didn't use the word whine, but kind of rotate your hips because it kind of helps the baby come down. And I remember asking her, why? And my mother went into like this very detailed conversation. It was probably a lot for me at that age, but she is the type that explained everything. So she went into a very detailed conversation. She was like, it's even a good idea for the woman to be intimate with their partner, with their husband right before they're about to give birth, and they should move this way. Like, I mean, very, very detailed. And I mean, in hindsight, I think a lot for the conversation at the time. It was like, oh, okay, all right on me. But and it wasn't any shame about it. It wasn't any shyness. My mother was really speaking from, this is why you're doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's helpful for you. And this is how you should move when you're doing X, Y, and Z because it's helpful for you. Now, she was talking about within the context of giving birth and having contractions and how it was comforting for a woman during contractions, especially if they're not ready, if they're not fully dilated and ready to give birth. She was saying that it's actually comfortable for them or helpful for them. And for me, as an adult, I kind of look back at those conversations and I'm like, subhanAllah, she was teaching me without teaching me. Like, she was teaching me something without teaching me something, if that made sense. And I appreciate those conversations. Now, with my dad, I never had those type of conversations like that. That's just not happening, like, ever. Like, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think he'd be so like scared and uncomfortable. Like, that just would never happen. But I do wonder, though, and this is a question for all of us, especially those of us with sons, how do we have these conversations with our sons?
I'm not. That's a very good question. It's something I my kids are still very, very young, but I do think about that as they get older and have questions and want to navigate. Some of the stuff I learned growing up is applicable. Some of it, frankly, is irrelevant now, and it won't be too useful. So, trying to balance those two things with young boys, it's something I'm still working on right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it because it scares me a little bit. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out.
All right. So going into our final question, and then we'll jump into the 7 tips, inshallah. Naima, do you want to read that final question for us?
Yeah, I just realized I was on mute again. my favorite pastime, mute. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so gentlemen, do you find that marriages are more successful when both parties are evenly yoked, meaning education, marital background, religious background, versus born night? What are your opinions? Are you guys on mute as well?
No, I'm not on mute. I'm not running the bootleg again, Doc. It's your turn. No more bootlegs.
No more bootlegs, Ray. I don't know what that means.
All right. Sorry. Can everybody hear me? I wanted to share just one thought about the previous question about talking to your young boys, right? The one thought that came to mind is the importance of your son's understanding that pleasing your wife is from the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have a religious obligation to fulfill the needs and the rights of our wives, and honestly, that's one of the best perspectives to take, and so that you're teaching it as a skill. Here are the skills that successful husbands have. Here are the skills that effective husbands have, and from amongst those skills are the domain of communication, the domain of responsibility and providing, the domain of the romantic and physical and emotional romantic life, right? And so kind of presenting it within that context and saying all right, I'm going to teach you and walk you through, the important skills that you need to have, and things that have worked for me, or that didn't work for me. You know what I mean? Or things that I've learned from my successes and my mistakes. That to me is one of the best approaches, inshallah, because a lot of us as men, we don't always necessarily recognize our duty towards our wives as being number one from the sunnah, and then being number two obligatory, right? And so, like, starting from there, making Allah central and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not just doing it to make her happy. I'm doing it because I want Allah to be pleased with me. You know, as the Prophet sallallahu, I mean, there's so many hadith, and I'm going to get into them all. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he explained that you know, sexual is a sadaqah, right? And the Sahaba explained, they asked, you know, Allah is even going to reward us for something that we do out of our own desires. It's something that we want for our own selves anyway. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he responded back to them, you know, if you go about fulfilling your physical needs and haram.
Ooh,
No.
we looks like we lost Ray. Muhammad, do you want to comment on the question while we wait for Ray to rejoin us?
The final question you mentioned?
Yes.
Right. I do believe, I think I mentioned it last week, marrying someone who's, you know, you used the word yoked here. Been hearing that word a lot recently. Now I know what it actually means. I didn't know it until now. But yeah, you should, I don't think it's a great idea to have someone too many levels above you or too many levels below you. You should be compatible somehow, you know, synchronous with each other. And it can be education, marital background, you know, other cultural issues. I just personally believe in, if you eliminate as many possible roadblocks, points of contention, you know, it can make things a little easier. That's not to say that you can't overcome those things, because of course you can, but those can be roadblocks. If you know, if a brother, if a sister is, I mean, I'm not everybody, you know, risk is from Allah, but you know, if a sister is a heart surgeon somewhere at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, I'm not down, and the brother is working, you know, as a cashier at a supermarket, working hard and stuff for his money, and you know, halal, honest living. They're going to be operating in different spheres at work. When they come home, what are they going to talk about? You know, she's talking about this, he's talking about that. You know, these can be, not always, but these can be points of contention to me. You know, where I'm not saying you have to limit yourself to, you know, I can only marry another doctor, or I can only marry another person who's, you know, who also owns a small business like I do, or whatever. But you should try to, in my opinion, to keep things, you know, as close for compatibility reasons. You know, we're living in a non-Muslim society. We have a lot of influences around us, a lot of things, you know, nipping at us. You want things to be as calm and as cool and collected inside your home. So make that the common ground as much as possible. I'm definitely a believer in the word yoked here. Yeah, I am definitely personally a believer in trying to keep that, you know, similar levels, not the exact same, but at least, you know, close enough.
Agreed. Oh, we just lost Ray again. Ladies, do you want to maybe comment on what Muhammad has mentioned?
I would say I definitely agree. And it reminds me also of, I definitely agree with what Muhammad is saying about it. It's not a deal breaker, but it does take out possible roadblocks along the way. And it kind of reminded me of what Ray was saying about, is that when we communicate, we assume people have the same definition. So love means this, marriage means this, you know, friendship looks like this. And now you add on the extra layers of cultural, different socioeconomic statuses. There's like, the gap can be so huge. Someone from a particular culture, love might mean this, and in my culture, it might be displayed like this. So I definitely agree with that. It wouldn't be a deal breaker, but why make things more difficult than you have to?
I 100% agree. I mean, speaking from personal experience, I was married to someone who was not American, was not from this country, was not born and raised here. Yeah, those are, I mean, those are already, again, going in with certain, like Muhammad said, roadblocks going in, certain things you're going to have to work out because your backgrounds are so different and the way you're brought up is so different. Yes, at the end of the day, you're both Muslim, but again, raised completely different culture, it's different environment, different things they view in terms of marriage, even and you know, wives and moms. So something to take consideration. I'm not saying you cannot marry someone who's not from the same background. You know, you can't marry someone who's different background. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that if you're going to go into a relationship with that, keep that in mind, and that you may have to work a little harder at certain things to make sure you do find that common ground, and
Right.
that way the marriage can be successful, and inshallah, will work out. But again, also on the flip side, if you do happen to be from the same background, that also doesn't guarantee success. My first marriage was with an African American, similar background in terms of how we grew up, being weird, in terms of that's a commonality, and we had nothing in common though outside of that. So again, just because someone is from the same background as you doesn't guarantee that it's going to be a success, because again, like Muhammad mentioned, compatibility is important and will oftentimes determine success of your marriage. So I would just, people going in, keep those things in mind. Not a guarantee if you have the same background, because you may have the same background but nothing in common. But if you also want to marry someone from a different culture or a different background, there are some things you may have to work at in especially in the beginning, to find that common ground, to find that compatibility. So it could go either way.
When I think of this question, really quickly, I always think of inshallah my children, my daughters, and I always think about they're used to a certain standard of living, and so for me, I think inshallah in the next 5 to 10 years, when this is an actual process for us, I'm thinking that I personally think that socioeconomics will be also a contributing factor, because my daughters are used to a certain type of lifestyle. And I think that, not to negate anything else, and this probably sounds really snobby, but they are really used to a certain way of living. And of course, we wouldn't, Deen is the most important thing, and we wouldn't say no because of somebody's financial situation. However, I do think that it would be definitely a contributing factor because of what they're used to.
No, I agree. Dr. Ray, are you back with us?
I'm trying so hard. Today is the worst day. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It happened. It's happened to all of us. Some of us more than most. So trust me. So it happens. So Ray, going back to the question that we had, and thank you for elaborating on the previous question. So do you find that marriages, even from a clinical standpoint, are more successful when both parties are evenly yoked? Meaning, obviously you can see here it says, meaning similar education, and I'll include in that socioeconomic backgrounds, marital backgrounds, meaning someone who has been married previously versus someone who has never been married, religious background, someone who is extremely religious versus moderately religious versus not religious at all, and Bornite versus revert.
Yeah. Okay. So, number one, I think that marriages tend to be most successful, alhamdulillah, when people are the most honest and most clear with themselves and then with each other. Right? So, and what I mean by that is, sometimes we think we want a thing and we don't know what that actually is going to entail and what it's going to mean. And so sometimes people come to you and advise you and talk to you about what the realities of a particular relationship would look like, and they're not willing to be honest with themselves about it. Or a person that you want to marry is telling you the realities of what it would look like. You're not being honest, right? Like and the example of that would be the person who says, I thought when we would get married, things would change. Right? This is the person who's not dealing with the reality of the situation that they're facing. Right? So if you look at Khadija radiallahu anha and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were not even in terms of like professionally where they were. Right? They were also not necessarily even educationally, right? Like Khadija radiallahu anha, she was a professional woman. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's just a working class guy. He couldn't read or write and any of those things, but they made their relationship work, right? So it's not necessarily that those things have to be in order. It's just that the people who decide to be together have to be very honest and clear about what that really actually means and looks like. You know, for women, the example, that Muhammad put forward, that I was fortunate, alhamdulillah, to have enough internet connection to hear, was, the woman who's a heart surgeon, right? If she marries a guy who's a custodian, but they're both on the same page about what that means, they're both on the same page about what the responsibilities are of that, then yes, alhamdulillah, they're going to be able to make that relationship work. I've met a lot of guys who their wives pay all the bills, and the guys work, they're not making a whole lot of money, and the wives are paying all the bills, handling all the responsibilities, and then they want to come home and boss everybody around, right? Those are the situations where you find that people are really, really going to struggle, like making that marital dynamic work, right? Because they're not living up to all of their responsibilities. They're not on the same page and of the same accord. And so to me, that tends to be more of the issue than, what a guy or a woman does or does not do. I have a guy right now, alhamdulillah.
Oops, we lost Dr. Ray, and he was right in the middle of making a really good point. Hopefully we'll have him jump back on. I did want to comment. I did want to just jump in while we're waiting for him, and I'll stop as soon as he's right back. Never mind. Here he is. I hope. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Ray. You were making your point. Please continue.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a guy right now. He makes a whole lot of money, and his wife works, alhamdulillah, and she's, pursuing her education even farther than it is so far. And what he's learning is that even though he supported that in the beginning, he's not so supportive of it now, because it means he has to compromise on other areas of the relationship that he wanted to grow and develop. And to me, it's coming to light that they really weren't necessarily honest about, where they were coming from. Not that the woman wasn't honest, but I think in this case, the guy kind of wanted to be supportive, but he wants what he wants more than what her goals are conflicting with what he thought was going to be their trajectory in a relationship. So he can't be as supportive as he wanted to be. He wants to start a family. She wants to continue with her education. And so now it's turning into, the guy doesn't support me being an independent, strong woman. It's turning into a whole bunch of things. And again, it goes back to that idea of going into detail with each other. We don't get into the weeds, and we need to. Do you support my education? Yes. Do you want to have children with me? Yes. And then they move on, and you have to go deeper than that.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say, Ray, is that it can work. And I think all of these situations can work, but at the core of it is honesty, right? Whether you're evenly yoked or you are not evenly yoked, at the core of it is honesty. And we keep going back to this point of self-awareness, right? Like being honest with yourself. And we are actually going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But I definitely, you guys both make some really good points. I wanted to add that I think, and this is something that Ray, you and I have talked about, you can be from the same ethnic background, right? As Khalila mentioned with her first marriage, and you guys can still have these cultural barriers. One is from the north, one is from, Hickville country, has never been anywhere ever, and they don't know a lot about the big city, right? And so they navigate their world in a very small globe. And
that's right.
And that can cause a lot of challenges as well. So you can have like these cultural conflicts even within a shared cultural, when you share a similar culture. So I think those are a lot of some really good points. So now, the 7 tips to help brothers preserve their honor and avoid zina. And we wanted to touch on this last week, but alhamdulillah, this was an opportunity for us to have our brothers back on. So we are thankful. Give me 1 second. Let me just go to it. Okay. There we go. If I can. Why is it not letting me start? Okay, 1 second.
Do you want me to start? Or
yeah, I'm just trying to find a window. Where is it? Or maybe I need to minimize it. Yeah, go ahead, Naima. You can start.
the 7 rules that everybody's been waiting for. Drum roll. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the first rule would be when interacting with the opposite sex, ask yourself if you would be uncomfortable if someone you respected was watching you. And let me say that again, or just break it down. Would you be uncomfortable if somebody that you knew was watching you? Are you, I guess in layman's terms, like my mom would say, like, okay, is this how you would behave if I was there? So I think that that's what that one means. When you're interacting with the opposite sex, ask yourself if you would be uncomfortable if someone you respected was watching you.
And we want,
Okay.
and we want the brothers to elaborate.
Our second tip.
No,
is
go ahead, Naima.
Unnecessary small talk. If it's at work, try to keep all conversations work related. And if it's at school or a neighbor, make sure that you openly identify as Muslim. Make sure that you identify. Make sure that it identifies and dictates how you speak, the language you use, and being honest and having integrity. So, okay. So, I guess that, I mean, for Muslim women, it's always obvious that you are Muslim if you are covering. For Muslim men, maybe it's not so obvious depending on how you choose to dress. So I'm assuming, and you brothers, you can, interject that on this, please. How you speak and your demeanor is going to be a contributing factor in avoiding small talk. If it's at work, keep it work related. If it's a neighbor or at school, make sure the topic is on point and you're not opening yourself up to suggestive things based off of that. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I thought about it in terms of just, day-to-day stuff, in my experience, whether school, work, neighbors, whatever. And a lot of times it seems like how you project yourself is going to dictate, in some cases, how people treat you and how they respond to you. If, you say, I have neighbors, women neighbors, of course, I live in a regular neighborhood. So, good morning, how are you? How's the family, stuff like that. But, you don't ever put yourself in a situation where it becomes anything beyond that. You have to know, like, to use the word that you just use, self-aware. You have to be self-aware of what your, weaknesses are, whatever your triggers are, and just, avoid those situations like the plague. And if you're interacting with the opposite sex, and when I mentioned, someone's watching you, pretend someone's watching you, that's, that long hadith about, what is Islam, what is Iman, what is Ihsan, that final step of, worshiping Allah and, knowing that He sees you. So for some people, they have that level of Islam where they're constantly cognizant that Allah is watching them and they behave as such. There's some people who have reached that level, mashallah, but some people need to think of it in terms of, would I be okay if someone walked up on me and saw me interacting with this person? If Sister so-and-so saw me, or if my dad saw me, or if Sheikh so-and-so from the masjid, the Hafiz saw me, whatever that is, would you be comfortable, if they saw you interacting with this individual, would they assume that you're just doing something normal, or would they assume that, hey, what are you doing? So, and you never know, what you're giving off to someone else around you. Maybe you're giving this person, in a male's case, are you leading this woman on unintentionally? Maybe you're just a naturally outgoing, friendly person, and that just happens to what she's looking for in a friend or something. And you may overextend yourself. So I'm not saying be curt and be, a robot, but, just, be polite, be friendly, but the unnecessary, joke telling and, that type of stuff, try to leave that alone, for sure. And again, be mindful of your language, be frank, be respectful,
It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that is mentioned in this tip is make sure that identity dictates how you speak, the language you use, your honesty and your integrity, that denotes that the brother is identifiably Muslim, right? And Naima made a really good point about the fact that women, we actually have a hijab that is more detailed and more involved than the Muslim man, but the Muslim man also has a hijab, right? So making sure that you're not wearing skinny jeans, right? That shows the shape of your private area. Making sure that your clothing is loose as well. Making sure that you're growing your beard. And for me, personally speaking, I think that it's important for brothers to look visibly Muslim, whether that means they're wearing a kufi, whether that means they dress in a thobe on occasion, but that they look identifiably Muslim, right? And it's important for them to do that. It's not a wajib for them to do that. So please don't start coming in the comments saying that we're saying this is wajib. It's not wajib.
Wait. Zainab.
Yes.
Hold on. So it is wajib.
No. I'm talking about the kufi, right? That's all I'm talking about. Like the kufi is not.
Okay, I was going to say
it is wajib for the Muslim man to be identifiably Muslim.
The Muslim
it
must
is
distinguish himself. That's right. Yep.
Absolutely, 100%. And I was just about to make that point, but thank you for making it, Dr. Ray, because it's important. And many of our brothers don't know that they're supposed to look identifiably Muslim. And oftentimes, what ends up happening is that when you look like the average Joe, you are treated as the average Joe.
Yep,
there is protection in hijab for the Muslim brother as well as for the Muslim sister. There is a physical, it becomes almost, because we know what the hijab means, it's a barrier, right? And it is a physical barrier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just talking about the heart, he's talking about something physical that is visual for people to see. So I think I just wanted to comment on that, because I think that that's such an important point, because it determines how you move, right? There are some people who don't care, but it should determine how you move.
Right.
Naima, do you want to go ahead and read number 3?
Okay, great. Great. Go ahead. Zainab, did you want to go ahead, or do you? Okay, great. So 3, strengthen numbers. Socialize with people who will support your goals. It's easier to stay motivated and focused when you have a network of like-minded friends. And always ask Allah for protection. Understand that He only wants what's best for you and does not give you a task that you can't handle.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Anyone want to elaborate on that?
Can you hear Dr. Ray, or?
It looks a little frozen.
Yeah. I was waiting for you. I thought you were going to go first.
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to quickly say, make sure if this is something that you struggle with, or something that is maybe more challenging because of your daily routine, where you work, where your daily routine, maybe you interact with a lot of people of the opposite gender, and maybe that's something that's not easy for you. Just make sure that you have people who are going to support that. Meaning, there might be Muslim brothers, and on a quick side note, sometimes we have friends that serve different purposes. Like, this is the friend that I play basketball with. This is the friend I play video games with. This is the friend I go to the masjid with. This is the friend sometimes we have friends that, meet individual friend needs, and they're not all packaged in one. So maybe you have friends who understand, who are all striving in the same way to try to be, respectable, upright men. And that you'll be safe around them, that they're not going to, if you're socializing, they're not going to, take you certain places or encourage you to do certain things, or, certain people may not pop up and put you in an uncomfortable situation, or, so make sure you have those people, because you can feed off of each other's, journey, if you will. I know I had that in undergrad. I had that. there are a lot of us, a few of us brothers, we had, this. To be frank, we had this in common. We were like, trying to make sure staying out of trouble, and trying to do the right thing in a difficult society. And we will make our little jokes and stuff, and to kind of keep each other on the same path here. But that really helped, because we all agreed at the very least on this, that that's not really an option for us. We kind of want to do things by the book, kind of follow the rules type of thing, and we're actively trying to get married, But in the meantime, we have this hurdle. So we shared that together, and it was extremely helpful.
Dr. Ray?
Yeah.
No, not you, Lele.
The first thing I would say is I would say to clarify your values, right? Like, you know, a lot of Muslim men sometimes, you know, they don't want to be around other Muslim men because they don't necessarily want to get so religious or want to stay away from the things that are haram for them. And you got to ask yourself, you know, what are my values in this instance that either persuade me or dissuade me from surrounding myself with Muslims? You know, is there part of what I'm drawn toward that's not good for me, that I'm getting something out of it? I'm getting something out of it. You know, I could protect myself from women at work, but I'm not. And why is that? I could protect myself from women in my neighborhood, but I'm not. And why is that? You know, and when I have opportunities to surround myself with Muslim men, you know, why am I avoiding that? And why is it that I'm looking for the shortcomings of the Muslim men as a reason why I'm doing that, right? Like, oh, you know, the guys are like this, or they're judgmental, or they're this, that. You know, we find negative reasons to stay away from them. And to ask yourself, you know, am I also avoiding something too? Is it not just maybe that they're not good brothers, or they have bad character, or they're going to judge me, but I'm also reluctant to be challenged to change something within my own self. And to also encourage the sisters, right? Like, you want to not be with a guy who's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, because a lot of men, we do things that women will accept from us. And that's an important thing to understand too, not to put it all on the women. But if women suddenly stopped accepting these things from men, men would suddenly stop doing them, right? Like, I got to be honest about the power that women do have, at least in the beginnings of a relationship. Now, if you marry me and you marry me doing all this other kind of stuff, I'm going to keep doing that because that's what you marry. But if I got to change in order to marry you, and a guy does change, then usually he's the kind of guy who's willing to sustain that. And so I would encourage you to it. I know a lot of men who pretended to be religious to marry women, and the women married them, and then the women stayed with them once they found out the men don't pray, have no interest in going to the masjid, have no interest in themselves investing in teaching the children Islam, even though they want their children to be Muslim. They have no inclination toward practicing it. Oftentimes, they don't even really believe in Allah. Right? And the women stay with them. And the message that sends the guy is like, we on the right track here, right? Like, and so I think in those instances, you got to be wary of what your values are as men, but then also women to be wary of what you'll accept from a guy, because what you teach him, you'll accept from him, he'll give you.
So, Ray, in about 10 seconds, can you summarize tip number 4, which is understanding what your physical and emotional triggers for pursuing intimacy are?
Okay, so, you know, are you watching things that are going to make you, you know, more inclined toward wanting to commit zina, right? Or, you know, like with pornography, what I find with pornography for a lot of men and women is that it's a lot of self-medicating. It starts off as something you enjoy, but then it turns into something that it's like drinking a beer after a long day at work, you know, that people have these emotional difficulties that they go through, and they turn to these things that are sexual to kind of help them cope or not feel bad. And so a lot of times either we're looking at something that's increasing our desire, we're having hormonal issues, even as men, our hormones go crazy, or we're having stresses that are making us want to turn to these things that, you know, make us vulnerable to zina.
Okay. Tip number 5, actually investing yourself in the barriers that would protect you from zina.
That goes back to intentions, right? A lot of times we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't act on it, right? Because maybe we're not necessarily invested in that. We know we're supposed to be doing different. We know we're supposed to be changing those things, but you know, maybe we're not that invested in getting close to Allah. Maybe when we don't see it as being such a bad thing that we work as hard as we should, or maybe we want the thing that we know we're supposed to be staying away from. And you gotta kind of investigate yourself to figure out why is it that you know you're supposed to change but you're not, and then try to correct that.
Number 6 is be wary of the promises you hear from women. Just full disclosure to our viewing audience, these tips were actually brought forth by our brothers. And I'm curious about this one, Ray. Again,
Me
if you
too.
can summarize what you mean in 10 seconds, I'd really appreciate that. So again,
Wait, I'm sorry.
I'll read it again. So tip number 6 was
yes, I forgot that one.
be wary of the promises you hear from women. What does that mean?
Yes, please elaborate.
Women will sometimes promise men the world, right? And a guy, if he likes a woman or he's attracted to her, he's going to buy into some of those promises, if not all or most of those promises, right? I was just on the phone when we hung up from our lecture last week. I had a session with a brother, and he's going through the same thing. And when I brought this issue up, he was like, "Oh my God, how do you know?" As a Muslim man, we get a lot of promises from women, Muslim women and non-Muslim women alike, you know, and a lot of guys can be drawn to non-Muslim women because those women promise to be the best Muslim woman we've ever seen in our lives. And we're so drawn to giving Allah and you know, and we're going to, you know, I'm going to embrace Islam and I'm going to be this ideal Muslim woman and we're going to raise our children this way, or she's not going to embrace Islam, but I love you so much, we're going to raise it. Muslim, and whatever we're supposed to do, I'm going to be totally down with the program. And a guy falls into that and he believes it because he likes the woman or he likes the idea of giving power and bringing her into Islam. And we get so attached to that idea of what the woman is telling us is going to be the truth, right? And the guy told me last night, he said, "Oh, she's back again," and she told me, "Once I marry her, you know, I'm going to see that everything is going to be perfect and it's going to be exactly how I want it to be, but I got to marry her first to see that." And but guys, we get sucked in. You
so
know,
are
we
saying
do get
beware of game. Are you saying in essence to beware of game?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
and
interesting.
guys, we don't realize how much we're vulnerable to it.
I said that's interesting because I didn't think that women ran game on men. No, I'm just joking.
Oh my God. I've been promised the world. I've been promised the world.
I'm just joking.
Oh, you know, and it happens. It happens to a lot of guys.
Okay.
Right.
And the final tip, go ahead, Ray. You were going to say something really quick?
No, that was it. No.
Okay. The final tip is honesty about where innocent gestures are really leading you. Wow, that's a really good one.
Wow. Yeah.
Please elaborate.
Yeah. A lot of times we know what we want and we're kind of testing the situation to see how far we can go. Now, I might want to get physically involved with you because I like you so much. I'm so attracted to you. And I'm going to kind of make these little gestures here and there because I want to see what your boundaries are. And the farther you let me test the boundaries, the closer we're getting to the thing I really want. And the whole way there, I'm lying to myself. I'm going to stop here. 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 And I never do. And I'm working slowly toward the ultimate thing of what I want. And I'm lying to myself about what I'm doing to get myself there. And I'm kind of, you know, boiling the frog with the sister. You know, she'll let me call her a pet name. You know, I can nudge her with my shoulder when I'm telling her a joke, or you know what I mean. I can put something in her hand. I want to touch her hand. Maybe I'll hold her hand a little bit. Something scares her. I'm gonna hold her and make her, you know, feel secure. We're walking by a dog outside or something like that, and you know what I mean. Like these little things, they happen. You know, I can flirt with her, compliment her on over text message, and see how she responds to it. Maybe so I'll compliment something religious about her first, and then she accepts that, and then I'll compliment her voice, and she accepts that. Then I say, you look so beautiful today, and then she accepts that, and then I start working lower from her face to make compliments, right? And she accepts that, you know. And I'm just kind of testing the grounds a little bit to see how far I can go with the sister. And the sisters too, you know, they want sometimes to kind of test that too, and they'll let a guy do that, and it's kind of like an invitation. And we got to be honest with each other about not what we're saying today, but where it will lead us a month from now.
Right. Wow, subhanallah. These tips, and we're going to put them up on our page and on our website as well, inshallah. I think that these tips are so beneficial for our brothers. Mm-hmm. These are really good and really well thought out as well. And we wanted them to come from our brothers, right? Because we want to hear what they think are some of the pitfalls for brothers, because who would know their pitfalls better than them? Mm-hmm. I don't know the pitfalls of men. So we really appreciate this. And last but not least, before we jump to the questions, is our quote of the day. Quaisia, how we doing over there? I can't see anybody.
Is the post are we able to display the quote? Okay, there we go. Okay. Integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to other people. And that was by Spencer Johnson.
I love this quote, and I feel like it's so fitting for the topic that we have been discussing these past few weeks. The importance of integrity and what it means to have integrity, right? That's being honest with yourself, holding yourself to that standard. And then the other piece to that is being honest with other people. And Ray actually, and Muhammad, alhamdulillah, touched on, I'm sorry, somebody has a bird chirping in the background. I'm sorry.
That's me. My bad. They're drawn to my good nature. I apologize.
Oh, okay. So, but I think it's so important, for us to develop a certain level of honesty with ourselves. And again, that comes with self-awareness. And it's really, really important. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here, and let's jump into some of the questions and comments. We did have some from last week that we wanted to pose to the brothers that we didn't get a chance to pose today. Just give me 1 second and I'll try to pull them up. I wish there was a way I could share them from here, but unfortunately it's not. And then we'll try to jump to a few of the questions that we have today. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, I hope we can get to it. Okay, here it is. Okay, so there was one question that we had left off at, and it was Brother Rashawn's question. Shout out to Brother Rashawn and Sister Nairi. He had mentioned also, for some of us that did not grow up Muslim, we don't know how to approach Muslim sisters. And when we do, a lot of us get shot down by the father or the wali because we are not trained on how to deal with the process of getting married. So some of us some of us reverts. Some of us don't know what to do, or we do what we know. I'm sorry, Afwan. We do what we know, and it actually is easier. I think that's what he said, because getting to know for marriage. So some of us revert to what we know, Afwan, and it actually is easier. So I wanted to hear definitely Muhammad and Muhammad's comments on that. But Dr. Ray, being that you embraced Islam as an adult, I wanted to hear your perspective on that as well.
Sorry, I got most. It sounds like I got most of what he was trying to say. But I embrace Islam and I know what I'm supposed to do in getting to know someone. But we're kind of reverting back to what I knew from Jahiliyyah. Is that what the person said?
No, what Brother Rashawn was mentioning is that some of us, because we don't have a Muslim background per se, we don't necessarily know how to approach sisters when we're interested in them for marriage. And then when they do approach, they oftentimes get shot down by the wali or the father, right? Because when they're not familiar with the process. So what ends up happening is that they revert to what they know because it's easier.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't. I just heard that they get shot down. I can't hear all the question. I apologize.
Okay. Let me see if I can just copy it and send it really quick. Give me 1 second. I know you're on your. Here we go. I'm sending it now. So, Muhammad, in the interim, what are your thoughts on that question?
Well, like, I don't believe, honestly, it's any easier. Speaking as a person who, alhamdulillah, born and raised in Islam, but that in this regard, it doesn't make it any easier necessarily, because I'm not aware of any approved standard way of approaching a sister for marriage. Let's just say, and to be honest, in many cases, if a brother is interested in a sister, her wali, father, what have you, isn't necessarily around, like standing just right there. So what you're left doing is, okay, do I ask her for this information? And that, now you have a dilemma. Is the mere asking her for that information going to offend her? And saying, brother, what are you talking to me about? Like, do you want to go down that road, or do you take the chance? So if the sister is offended by that or uncomfortable with that, then that's the end regardless. So you kind of don't know what the proper way is of doing that. So let's just say the second scenario, in which you do know who her dad, uncle, wali, whatever is, and you're like, okay, I'm going to approach him. It's never easy. Having done this a few times over the years, it's never easy. And yes, there is a decent probability you will get shot down. If he means like by shot down, I'm not sure. Like the idea of it, the brother doesn't entertain, or just after talking to him, he's like, oh, I don't think you're a great fit. But you do, it's almost like a job interview. You go into it knowing that there's a possibility that they don't hire you. Like that's always a possibility. You may think you're qualified, your resume is sparkling, whatever, but there is a possibility in which they say, good luck in your future endeavors. Like you may get future endeavored. So knowing that rejection is part of the process. Yes, some of us, the first time, I know brothers, the first time they asked for someone, alhamdulillah, that's sister they married, and that was their experience. But most of us, it doesn't work that way. So knowing that that's going to happen is part of it, and it doesn't make it, born, reverted, whatever. That regard, to me, that's not a huge difference, because now, unless he's saying they're shooting you down for the mere fact of being a revert, which in and of itself is a separate bias and issue. But if it's just the act of rejection, that's going to come with it regardless.
Right. I think that's a really good
All
point.
right, so
Where did you get the question?
I'll try to rush to share my thoughts before my reception goes out again. Okay. So I think that the brother raises a topic that raises another issue, which is we are not informed enough. If he's saying that he's getting turned down by the wali of a sister because he's not familiar with the marriage process, then he's kind of taking one step before the other. You gotta inform yourself, educate yourself about marriage and how to get married and how to be married. What's the prophetic sunnah around marriage, right? Like, get to know that stuff first before you actually go and start sitting down with people, because again, we don't even know how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was as a husband, and we're out looking for spouses. And so I think that the people, if they're turning you away because of that, it's not necessarily blameworthy on their part. You got to familiarize yourself with the process. This is Mithun Khalid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that it's a firm binding oath that these women are taking from you, right? And so you got to approach it with that understanding that I have to be, I'm taking on the responsibility of leading a family and raising children and being responsible over a spouse. That's a big thing. And the first step in that is even learning how to get a spouse. As we know that if marriage is half of your deen, I always ask people, is half of your Islamic knowledge about marriage? Are half of the ayat that you've memorized about marriage? Are half of the hadith that you know about marriage? Because we have to take it very seriously. This is part of why our marriages are failing, number one. Yeah. And so I would encourage the brother for that. At least inform and educate yourself so that you know the process, because there's so much nonsense going on with the marital process anyway. When you marry people, that there's so much culture in it.
So the next comment comes from Sister Nairi. Assalamu alaikum, my lovelies. Oh, okay. Amin. I thought this was a question. I apologize. Amin. Barakallahu feek.
You just happened to throw up the sister picking you up by mistake.
I know, right? I know. A 40
this is just praise, y'all. I'm gonna take it down.
I'm gonna take it publicly, no less. Sister Mediha Anas asked, does the brother, meaning Dr. Ray, I'm assuming, unless Muhammad does marital counseling as well,
let me check my schedule. Hold on.
Outside of his community.
Yes.
Yes, and inshallah, we can share, Dr. Ray, with your permission, of course, we can share your contact information. Okay, so we will definitely share your contact information as well. Okay, no, I didn't read that one. Sorry. Sister Bayan Shahid mentions that I think the other thing that is that Muslim men and women are never taught about sexuality. It's posed as a maybe haram topic, and just told to stay away from the opposite gender. I completely agree with that. Sister Fatima also mentioned that sometimes the family dynamic plays a role. In some cultures, the in-laws also live with the married couple, making it challenging for the woman to be themselves in the household. I would 100% agree. But I think that sometimes we put, and maybe we can speak to this quickly, we put like these cultural barriers on ourselves that are not from the deen, right? It is not a wajib for you to live with your in-laws. It is not. And if a woman demands to have or requires that she has her own living space, that is something for the brother to fulfill and honor. She is not obligated to live with your parents, just like you are not obligated to live with hers. And I think that sometimes within these marriages where there's a lot that's heavy into culture, it's oftentimes void of what Allah and His Messenger have legislated. And we want to be careful with that. So Bayan also mentions that we need to be more open with our children or our children when marriage age, and prepare them for the sexuality piece of marriage the same way we teach them about other important factors. Absolutely. Sister Nairi mentioned, I think that as a couple, you should be able to communicate with your partner what you desire in the bedroom. As Muslim women, we have desires, and as long as the acts themselves are halal between the husband and wife, I feel like many Muslim men do a disservice to their marriage when they have certain desires but don't share it with their wives because she might be feeling the same way. And most women at a certain age in their life have a stronger sexual appetite than their husbands. Now, I can't see the rest of that. Oh, here it is. I don't know why it hides the rest. I can't see the rest of it. Something communication. Maybe is she saying communication is key? I'm probably missing that. I'm sorry, Nairi, but it's not coming up, and I can't scroll up to see the rest of it. But yes, I would agree with you on that. I think, again, going back to what Muhammad and Dr. Ray were talking about, the importance of communication between husband and wife, and having these open dialogues about what we like, what we don't like. And yes, once women reach a certain age, their sexual appetite does increase. It's a fact. It's not something that we should, shy away from. And what's true too, and to this, and Muhammad, you can as well, I think men's sexual desire decreases with age as well, right? So kind of trying to find that comfortable medium is important for couples to do as well. Sister Saba said, excellent explanation, Muhammad. Barakallahu feek. Khuzaima Abdullah said, Muslim women are kept out of the arts that help mold them and build confidence. Arts like dancing, sing to begin with. We're told these things are haram and a prelude to taking us out of Islam. I do agree that this is a nuanced issue, Khuzaima. I think that these are conversations that we need to have, and how we navigate these things in a halal way, because sometimes that we can go too far with them. And that's just a truth that we have to be able to own, right? But then staying within those parameters and still, learning how to move our bodies and dance and beautify ourselves. This is something that's important, and we don't pay enough attention to that. And if anybody else wants to comment on this, I agree. I think that I know when I realized that I was having a daughter, one of the things that I wanted to do was put her in ballet, right? I was like, oh, I want to put her in ballet. But then I said to myself, at a certain point, I'm going to have to pull her out, right? Because I'm not comfortable with her dancing in front of men, even if she's covered. You know, I'm not comfortable with you moving your body that way. And I don't think that this is Islamic. And I think that this could open a door to other things. What if she's extremely good at it and she wants to explore this as a life career? However, what is unfortunate is that we as Muslims don't have an alternative. There are no Muslim ballet companies where they're using the daf, right, for the girls to dance with, and with all women. And they are not being exposed to men. We don't have any healthy alternatives for our daughters to express themselves, and even our sons, right? There are no healthy alternatives for this, and that's the unfortunate part. Bayan mentioned, so I'm trying to go through this quickly as possible. Naima, did you want to comment on that?
No, I was just going to say that's so true. And what is the alternative? Within the Muslim community, Muslim young girls, they're overweight and they don't know, they don't have any skills. They don't have, you know, and then there's this idea that we keep the girls in the house. So they're not exposed to art or literature or different things because there's this realm of everything being haram. So you have I'm sorry to say it, but, and I'm just based off my experience with dealing with the youth for over 8 years, you have very shallow and two-dimensional people that are not versed in anything. And it goes both ways for brothers and sisters because the extent of their exploration is TikTok.
Right. You know, Naima, wallahi, you bring up such a good point, especially about the overweight thing. And we were talking about this offline, but I want to kind of bring up a point that Imam Shadi Muhammad had made. And I'm paraphrasing his words, but he had mentioned that many, many times, and this is something that is uncomfortable for some of us to hear, many times our sisters are hiding their unhealthy lifestyles, meaning their weight, their overweightness under their abaya, under their hijab, right? We're not taking proper care of ourselves. And it's a fact, right? And this is someone, Zainab Abdurrahim, I'm only speaking for myself, that has struggled with weight pretty much my entire adult life. Like, I'm not saying this being removed from that struggle, but it's important that we're honest about that struggle too. Like, oftentimes we're like, oh, I don't want to do my hair, throw a hijab on. You know, my face is a hot mess, you know, throw a niqab on. Oh, my body, I got 50 million stomachs, throw an abaya on. You know what I mean? We have to start taking better care of ourselves. And this is not just for husbands, right? Definitely that's a part of it. But our bodies are an amana, are entrusted to us from Allah. And this is not to be insulting. We're not those girls. We're not those people. This is really just to speak the truth about us not taking better care of ourselves and using Islam to hide that. Using what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, how he commanded us to cover, to hide something that we should still be taking care of regardless of how we dress outside. And I think, speaking to Naima's point, if we had some of these outlets, right? If Muslims did actually start opening all women's gyms where we didn't have to listen to Beyonce playing in the background, if we did start creating exercise groups and dance companies for Muslim girls, right, where the music is permissible, then maybe we would see a lot less of this.
True.
So going back to the next point, Bayan mentioned women raising boys need to teach them how to treat women and pay attention to what others like, not just making everything about you as a man. Very true. Very true. Bayan also mentioned many Muslim women are taught that your husband will teach you what to do, not giving the woman the knowledge to even think to consider themselves. Absolutely. Because oftentimes, if you've been married for a certain amount of time, you are demonstrating to your husband what you like. And obviously I'm speaking sexually within a halal marriage, of course. You are teaching your husband what you like, what you enjoy, what pleases you. So and in order for you to do that, you kind of got to know yourself, right? So I do think that we don't equip our daughters to know what it is that what they may like, right? I'm trying to be as careful as possible in making this comment. Sister Nejma mentioned thinking about talking to our daughters brought a reflection of the story of Umayma when her daughter was getting married, and she gave 10 qualities to her daughter. Right, she did. And I think that those qualities are really important. But one of the things that is not talked about, because I was actually thinking about bringing those forward. It doesn't talk about how to please your husband. There's not a lot, at least from what I've seen, that really speaks to pleasuring your husband, as well as you gaining satisfaction from a halal sexual relationship. Fathers, okay. Cover up that explains the hardship. Okay. Yes, I think we touched on that. Speaking to our children is vital, and it helps a great deal to start as soon as they start asking questions. However, keep in mind their age and not overburden them with information or dismiss it as they're too young. That's her name, guys. The halal sex, Dr. Shakira Abdullah, thank you, speaks about this on her Instagram, Halal Sexpert. Keep in mind the hadith of how we interact with our children. Paraphrase, play with them at 7. Up until the age of 7. The 7 years teach them, right? So from 7 to 14, you're teaching them. The next 7, you befriend them. Keeping this model in mind helps parents to nafi. I don't know what that means.
Maybe navigate.
Maybe navigate, and it doesn't allow me to scroll down, so I'm not even able to see it. So she says, so when a 5-year-old questions where babies come from, we as parents should not give the adult answer, but simplify it as much as possible with answering the question. This helps build a place of trust and honesty between the parent and child. And when puberty arises, the child will feel assured that mom and dad will be honest and helpful through these changes. Just a really quick point. When my daughter, so there's certain things I don't allow my daughter to watch or see. We had observed a husband and wife, a Muslim husband and wife. They pecked each other on the lips. And Leanne, my daughter, asked me, she's like, "Mommy, is this halal?" And I was like, "Yes, this is halal. They're married. This is the time that is halal." I didn't want her to feel awkward about it or shy about it. This is when it's okay to be affectionate with the opposite sex in this setting, right? Or explaining to her, like using that as an opportunity to explain to her that we are affectionate with one another, right? We do show love to one another. And this is not something that should be shied away from, but the context in which we do it is within marriage, that type of affection, right? Do I hug my dad? Do I give my brother a kiss on the cheek? Yes, this is affection as well, right? Giving what we see context. And when they do see something haram, because we don't live in a vacuum, it's giving that context as well. That's not something that we do outside of marriage. It's okay to kiss someone within marriage, but that's not something we do outside of marriage. Trying to see if there are any other questions. She said navigate through. I think that's what she was saying. Naomi said rule number 1, Annabella's rule before you left the house. Naomi. I think maybe that's an inside joke. But I think this is a good place for us to stop, inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Ray and Brother Muhammad, for joining us this week and staying on with us, alhamdulillah, and coming back for this conversation, because we think it's an important one. And inshallah, we'll definitely have you both on a lot more. Muhammad, we so appreciated your insight and your perspective. Just thank you both. We pray that the whole purpose of this, before we go, was really to talk about living, again, everything we do at MWI is about living Islam wholeheartedly, right? And that is also, as men and women, knowing how to navigate living Islam practically. And I think we hope that this show, this series of shows, was a demonstration of that, because oftentimes we don't talk about topics in this way. And we hope it was good. We learned from it. I know that we all thoroughly enjoyed these conversations, and we enjoyed like kind of exploring it and being a little bit uncomfortable. And hopefully you guys have taken something away from it, inshallah. Any final thoughts before we close out, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you for having me.
Just thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's an honor to work with so many people who are active in the community, trying to provide a helpful, useful service, addressing pertinent
And youthful,
topic.
Muhammad, and youthful.
Youthful, yes, you're right. That
You know,
was not a Freudian slip.
together,
Yes,
brother.
youthful service. So I appreciate the opportunity to be in your company. It's it's an excellent experience, and thank you for inviting me. I'm truly honored by that.
Alhamdulillah. Dr. Ray?
No, I just want to say Jazakallah khairan for you ladies for inviting us to have this talk. I know for myself, I feel like I have my own marching orders and work to do. So many different ideas have come up about, the importance of addressing these kinds of issues, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again. This was such a good conversation, and inshallah we'll be back with next week with more interesting conversations. Thank you again. Thank you all for the dua for my mom. Please continue to keep her in your dua. We pray that she comes home soon and is in a better condition than she left us. Yeah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We will see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Blessings have brought. This is what you strive for, what you sent for. I wanna go where no eyes never seen, no ears never heard, no mind can imagine. Paradise, no more tests, no more tears, no more trials. A paradise, just to hold my mother in my arms. A paradise, where I'll gaze into my children's eyes.